Now, we've probably all heard that turnover is vanity, a profit is sanity, and cash is king, and that your business can survive without profits but not without cash. And all of that's absolutely true. But apart from the obvious reality that you're in business to make a profit, cash in your business over the longer term is reflective of your profits anyhow. So a key tool to keep on top of your business profitability and ongoing viability is the break-even calculation and knowing exactly where your break-even point is. Now, the traditional break-even point is that pivotal point where you either start or stop making a profit, where your sales are equal to your total fixed and variable costs. And I like to call this the raw break-even. And while this is useful to know, it doesn't actually give you the true picture, because it doesn't allow for drawings or dividends and then the associated tax on those amounts. So if you're going to calculate your break-even point, here is how you do it. So you start with drawings or dividends. So no doubt you have owners or directors' wages in your overhead costs, but perhaps you need to draw down on funds in addition to these wages. Or maybe you need to allow for a certain amount of dividends to be paid out to shareholders. Either way, you need to account for these amounts as they come out after the net profit line. So let's say in this case $250,000 for drawings. Then you need to consider your debt obligations. So interest on borrowings is in your overhead costs, but principal or loan amortisation isn't. So maybe you want to allow for $100,000 of debt repayment. So you combine that with the drawings and you have $350,000 of after-tax requirements. That is, you need $350,000 of profits after allowing for tax in order to cover your drawings and your debt repayments. So you then need to allow for tax on these profits. Let's say tax at 30%, which is $150,000, giving a total requirement of $500,000 in net profit before tax. So while a raw break-even would be nil or no profit, a realistic break-even is $500,000. So you've sorted out your after-tax requirements and allowed for tax on that. The next step is to look at your costs, which is broken down into three areas. So you've got overhead costs, fixed direct costs, and then cost of goods sold. And all of these you should be able to get from your management accounts or financial statements, so long as you adjust for any changes that have been made since they were prepared. For instance, your most recent management accounts may show your overheads at 1.4 mil, but you need to allow for a new staff member that has just started. So let's say 1.5 mil in overhead costs. Then you have to account for fixed direct costs. These are all the costs above the line that aren't variable. Things like rent and warehouse wages and so on. Anything that doesn't vary along with sales volume. So we'll put $500,000 here for fixed costs. And then finally your variable costs or cost of goods sold. And these need to be entered as a percentage, of course, because they are variable. So we've got a very convenient round number of 50% here, which also gives a contribution margin of that same 50%. And if we follow this example through to the end, you simply take your total costs, so that's debt, drawings, tax, overhead and fixed, and then divide that total by your COGS percentage. So 2.5 million divided by 50% gives a break-even point of $5 million on an annual basis. And that's all it takes, 5 or 6 key drivers, and you have an accurate break-even. So your after-tax considerations, drawings and debt repayments, and then tax on those amounts, and then 3 areas of costs: overhead, fixed and variable. And once you have this calculation done, you can then make some adjustments, do some what-if scenarios and see what impact any changes have on that break-even level. So it's a simple calculation, but a critical number to be aware of, because you can't carry on in business, or at least you shouldn't carry on in business, for any length of time while you're under that break-even mark. If you can't get your sales up, you need to get your costs down, change some of the variables. And that's real business break-even in a nutshell.